Hi, Elaine here from markergeek.com. Today I'm sharing a quick tutorial video showing how I create a glow effect around, in this case, a lantern on the Stamping Bella Gnome with Lantern rubber stamp set that was released a couple of months ago. If you would like to see how I coloured the gnome himself, you can watch my separate video for that, which I have also uploaded today. So you'll find that on this channel, and I'll pop a link to it in the description below. I've done the video separately, firstly because that makes it easier. You don't have to watch the whole video if you don't have to, from start to finish, for the whole colouring process. Also because when I originally coloured the image, I lost the footage of the background element, and so I've had to colour the stamp again and do the background again. It wasn't a great hardship, admittedly, because I do love colouring these gnomes, but I'm running out of time to do everything that I need to do, so I could have done without that, but never mind. Here we are. I started out just by colouring the snow. Then I will go on to colour the dark sky background. I was going for a sort of an evening scene so that the lantern glow would be most effective. And basically I'm just colouring a really simple background. This is so easy to do. And I'm using a kind of scribbly technique for colouring the sky. It's one of the easiest ways I find to do it without worrying at this point about getting a smooth blend. Using kind of squiggly strokes and not worrying too much about even coverage at this point, because there will be a couple of layers on this. And these happen to be some of my favourite colours for colouring this sort of sky. I tend to reach for these most often, the B79, B69 and B29. And I also will, at the end, use the colourless blender to help add some texture to the sky and around the glow area, which you'll see why when I come to it. And that will help to soften the sky and cover up any sort of patchy areas. Although as this dries back, it isn't that patchy. It looks really scribbly and squiggly right now, but the ink is still kind of moving within the paper, and as I layer and add more ink in, it will kind of blend and soften out. I find the approach that I'm about to show you the easiest for adding a glow effect on a scene like this. It isn't the only approach that you could take, but I think it's pretty simple to do and it works quite nicely. Basically, having coloured the background and coloured the image, I'm now using the yellow markers, which are obviously lighter than the blues that I've used, to act almost like the colourless blender does. So they're going to push that colour, the darker ink around and move it around, which will allow me to push the darker ink away and create the appearance of a glow. I could have started with the colourless blender to move some of that colour, and sometimes I might do that. I didn't in this case because I do want to retain some of the appearance of a darker sky behind the light, if that makes sense. I didn't just want it to be a pure glow, like a pure yellow, which is also why I coloured the background first, so that I could get the yellow to move into the blue sky and create the effect that I was looking for. You get this sort of, as the lighter ink is working and pushing that darker ink around, you get this sort of hazy, feathery look, which I think is really effective for this sort of thing. I think it makes it look a little bit more natural than if I had just coloured the yellow and then coloured the blue around it. I do use the colourless blender as well. I can see there's a bit of glare on the screen at the moment. That's actually Y00. I use the varying shades of yellow, with some very light ones and the darker ones to build up the look. And I'm working backwards and forwards between them and using some of the colourless blender to get the look that I want. At the moment you can see obviously there's that kind of dark area around it where all that ink has pushed out to the side, and I want to really soften that into the rest of the sky, which is where the colourless blender will come in very useful. And one tip would be to approach this with some patience and a little bit of time. One thing that is useful to be able to do, which I didn't do so much here, is to be able to leave some time for the ink to dry, which is why you can see that I'm sort of working again on that snow area now, and I kind of move backwards and forwards between doing that and working back on that lantern glow, because I'm giving the ink around the lantern time to work and kind of dry, and that really helps you to not overwork the area. So if I wasn't recording a video, I probably would have walked away for a bit longer, gone and got a cup of tea, come back and worked on it a bit more over the course of time. But trying to get this video filmed ready to upload, I wanted to sort of work on a little bit quicker. But also this is another reason why you shouldn't immediately discard your work, because the ink takes a little bit of time. I mean, it is a fast medium to work with, but it does take a little bit of time to work within the fibres of the paper. And so very often it can be a good idea to walk away from your work and come back a little bit later when the ink has fully settled into the paper, especially when doing a technique like this, because at some points, like right now, it looks pretty horrible. It looks a little bit green and messy, and it's got that dark border around the one edge, but I keep working it until I'm happy with it, and I allow some time in between working on this area. And I did stop filming for a little while and walked away for a little bit, did something else, came back, not for too long because of time pressures, but I allowed the ink to do its work as much as possible. I could easily have given it up as a bad job at this point, but I persevered because I know how this works, and it worked out fine in the end. At this point I was thinking, oh, this isn't quite as good as the previous one that I'd done. I wish I had the footage for that still. But then I remembered that, yeah, you just have to kind of keep going and working with it until you're happy. And I'm actually going to come in with the colourless blender and sort out that dark line around the edge in a moment. As you can see, that's basically where all of the ink from around that lantern, it sort of pushes it back, because the colourless blender doesn't really blend, and it doesn't remove colour. It can't remove the ink, but it just pushes it within the fibres of the paper. It's like kind of diluting it. And so you get that kind of dark halo around the edge where all the darker blue pigment has sort of pushed out. So I'm softening that out by using some sort of dabbing motions and dragging it to the side with the colourless blender. And I keep coming back to it. I'm working on the sky on the rest of the sky at the same time, adding in that sort of like random dotting to create some texture. And then I come back to that glow area and do a little bit more work when the ink there has dried, so that I'm not oversaturating that area, because that would just cause a big mess. And you won't quite get to see the effect fully on the video, but you will see it in the photo at the end of the video, or if you want to go over onto my blog and look at it there will be a link in the description of this video. You can see that it dries back further. That ink really hasn't fully settled into the paper by the time that I'm finished here. So yeah, whenever doing a technique like this, walk away, leave it for a while, come back to it. You will find that once that ink has fully settled within the paper, that you're much happier with the results. And if you're still not fully happy, you can then at that point do a little bit more work on it. Now I'm just fixing a little bit of that sky area. I wasn't hugely happy with the line where the sky meets the snow. I wanted to bring it down slightly further just so that lantern glow made a little bit more sense, as it did on my final card the first time I coloured this. Finally, you're going to see me come in with a Sakura white jelly roll pen to add some falling snow all over the image, making sure to have it going over the gnome so it looks like he's standing in the snow, in the falling snow, and making sure to have some of the variation in the size of the snowflakes, and also making sure to have some of them falling over and around that lantern glow, which will help to distract from any of the harsh edges where that ink has been pushed around. And it will also help to distract from any patchiness or texture in the sky. It's all about those little details that really help to build up the whole scene. And that's it. I hope this video has helped you to see how easy it is to add an effect like this, and I hope you'll feel inspired to try it out yourself. For all product details and any more information, pop over to my blog. The link is in the description below, along with a link to the video for the colouring of the gnome. And thank you for joining me. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I will catch you next time.